The music was soft, the garden smelled like roses and dollar bills, and the sun painted everything gold. Guests were smiling, cameras were flashing, and my sister stood there, glowing in her designer wedding dress like she was the sun herself. But all eyes weren't on her. They were on me. Me, standing dead center in front of the wedding arch, wearing the exact same gown as the bridesmaids, except mine was tailored better. I was holding a microphone with a confident smile that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." Gasps spread through the crowd as I took a slow step forward. My mom clutched her pearls, and my dad's mouth hung open. My sister's fake smile twitched, and for a moment, just a split second, she looked scared. And then I said into the mic, loud and clear, "I wasn't aesthetic enough to be a bridesmaid? That's funny, because now I am the wedding." Everyone froze. You could hear the wind move. I waited just long enough for the tension to pull tight like a rubber band about to snap, and then I did what I came to do. But before I tell you exactly what I did next, you need to know how this all started. Because this wasn't just about a dress or a wedding. This was about years of being treated like I was less. About always being the funny one, or the weird one, or the not as pretty one. This revenge didn't come out of nowhere. It was earned layer by painful layer. It started 4 months ago in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. I had just gotten home from my shift at the animal shelter. I smelled like wet dog and peanut butter treats, but I didn't care. I love my job. Animals didn't judge you. They didn't care what you looked like, or if your thighs touched or your teeth weren't straight. They just wanted love. I walked into the kitchen and found Mom and Dad sitting at the table with my sister, Claire. She had a giant wedding binder open, filled with tabs, fabric samples, and color-coded schedules. It looked like a military operation. "There she is," Claire said when she saw me, her voice too cheerful. "We were just talking about the wedding." I smiled. "Yeah? Do you guys need help with anything?" She looked at Mom, then back at me. "Actually, that's what we wanted to talk to you about." I sat down, still in my scrubs, still a little sweaty from walking dogs all day. I didn't think anything of it. Claire closed the binder slowly, like she was preparing to say something serious. "So, we've picked the bridesmaids," she said. "And I wanted to explain why you're not one of them." I blinked. I felt my stomach twist a little, but I waited. "It's not that we don't love you." Mom jumped in, voice soft like she was trying to be sweet. "But Claire's going for a very specific look. She wants everything to be aesthetic, you know? Light pastels, delicate tones, soft lines." Claire nodded. "You're just not really that vibe." I felt like someone had slapped me with a glittery pillow full of lead. "I'm not that vibe." I repeated. "You're more bold," Claire said. "Which is great. Like you have your own thing going on. It's just not weddingcore." Weddingcore? What the hell even was that? Dad added, "We're hiring professional models to fill in the bridesmaid spots, so it's nothing personal." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I honestly thought they were joking. They weren't. Claire continued, "You'll still be invited, of course. VIP guest list. We'll even seat you close to the front." "Oh wow," I said, my voice flat. "So generous." Mom touched my hand. "Sweetheart, don't be like that." I pulled my hand away. "You want your wedding to look like a Pinterest board so badly that your own sister isn't good enough to be in it." Claire blinked fast, like she was about to cry. "I just don't want anything to ruin the visual flow." I stood up. My chest felt tight. My face was hot. I didn't trust myself to say anything else without screaming. So I left. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. I wasn't sad because I wasn't a bridesmaid. I was humiliated. They didn't even try to lie to me. They just straight up said I wasn't aesthetic enough. But that was the moment it all started. I'm not a mean person. I don't like revenge. I believe in forgiveness. I volunteer with animals, for crying out loud. But something about the way they all just agreed, without hesitation, that I wasn't pretty enough to be part of the dream, it lit a match inside me. The next day, I started planning. Not for revenge. Not yet. At first, I just wanted to prove to myself that they were wrong. I started going for morning runs. I drank water. I started taking care of my skin, not to be pretty, but because I deserved to feel good. Then I got my hair trimmed, bought a dress that fit like a glove. Not to impress anyone, just to remind myself that I was still me, still worth showing up for. But something funny happened when I started taking care of myself. I started getting noticed. At the dog park, someone complimented my smile. At the grocery store, someone asked if I was a model. At work, a guy left a note on the counter with his number and a doodle of a golden retriever. And that's when it hit me. I had changed. Not who I was, but how I saw myself. And that's when the idea started to form. What if I showed up to the wedding in a way they never expected? Not as a guest, not even as a bridesmaid, but as the main attraction. It was bold. It was petty, but it was also perfect. So I started digging, planning, connecting dots. And I found something. Something that made my heart race. Claire's wedding planner was a woman named Victoria. She was obsessed with Instagram, and I mean obsessed. She posted every detail about her events, from flower samples to guest seating charts. And guess what? She posted the list of actual bridesmaids, the professional models they hired. One of them? I recognized her. Not from a magazine, but from college. Her name was Becca. We were in the same dorm freshman year, and I once helped her pass a biology final by tutoring her for 3 straight nights. I reached out. Hey, I typed, we haven't talked in forever, but I saw you're part of a wedding gig that might be connected to my family. Can we talk? She replied in 5 minutes. We met for coffee the next day. She was still just as sweet as I remembered, and when I told her what had happened, she looked horrified. Oh my God, she said. That's awful. Then she smiled. But I have an idea. And that idea? It changed everything. You see, the models weren't just bridesmaids. They were also backup dancers. Claire had this big choreographed bridal party number planned for the reception. The whole thing was supposed to go viral. It was a secret, but Becca had the video of the rehearsal routine. I asked her, what would happen if one of the dancers got sick? She raised an eyebrow. And that's when the plan was born. Step 1. Becca would tell the coordinator that one of the models dropped out last minute. Step 2. I'd fill in. I had the routine down in 3 days. Thank you very much. Step 3. The moment would come. The music would start. The crowd would expect a cute bridesmaid performance. But what they'd get would be me. Back, bold, and impossible to ignore. It was risky. It was crazy. And it was absolutely going to happen. But first, I had to train. I had to prep. I had to become undeniable. For weeks, I danced, practiced, rehearsed in secret. No one knew. Not my family. Not my sister. Not even my coworkers. And the night before the wedding, I looked in the mirror and whispered, let's make this unforgettable. Which brings us back to the big day. To the wedding. To the garden. To me, standing there front and center, with the mic in my hand and all eyes on me. And just as I opened my mouth to drop the next bombshell, a scream came from the back of the crowd. Everyone turned. And then, boom, a crash, a fall. And the entire wedding shifted in a direction none of us saw coming. People screamed. Chairs clattered. A collective gasp rolled through the garden like thunder over a lake. My mic slipped from my hand and thudded softly against the grass. At the very back of the aisle, right by the bar, a tall flower arrangement had fallen. No, been knocked over, and lying right next to it was Claire. Flat on her back, arms twisted awkwardly, veil tangled around her face like a spiderweb. The bride had fainted. For 1 whole second nobody moved. Even the birds went silent. Then chaos. Claire, my mom shrieked, hiking up her floor-length gown and sprinting toward the scene like a linebacker. Dad wasn't far behind. Guests parted like the Red Sea. Someone called for water. Someone else yelled, "Is there a doctor here?" I just stood there, frozen, my hands shaking, my heart banging around inside my chest like a racquetball. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. The entire reception had stopped cold, and not because of my performance, not because of the speech I'd prepared. Not because of my perfectly timed revenge. Because Claire had collapsed. I dropped to my knees and scrambled toward her, heart in my throat. Not because I suddenly forgot how they'd humiliated me, but because she was still my sister. "Claire?" I said, brushing the veil away from her face. Her eyes fluttered. Then, with a hoarse little groan, she whispered, "Water." Someone shoved a glass into my hand, and I helped her sip it slowly. She coughed, winced, then squinted up at me. "Why are you in a bridesmaid dress?" I didn't answer. She stared for a second longer, and then her eyes widened. "You—" Before she could finish that thought, her wedding planner, Victoria, came rushing over like her stilettos were on fire. "Oh my God," she screamed. "This is a disaster." "A disaster?" She said it like someone had knocked over a cake, not like the bride fainted at her own wedding. But before anyone could ask what was happening, Claire sat up, suddenly alert. "Wait," she gasped. "Is my makeup okay?" Victoria hesitated. Is my dress torn?" "Tell me it's not torn." I blinked. She was worried about the dress? And that was when I realized something. This wasn't medical. This wasn't stress. This wasn't an emergency. Claire had faked it. I stared at her in disbelief as she blinked dramatically and clutched her forehead like she was starring in a soap opera. I don't know what happened," she said, not even looking at me. "It was just too much. The pressure, the emotions, the heat. It was 72 degrees. Breezy. Under a canopy. Someone handed her a mirror, and she inspected her reflection like she was in a movie montage. Then she stood up, gracefully, slowly, milking every second. And just like that, the show resumed. Except now, all eyes were on her again. My moment? Gone. My speech? Forgotten. Even the mic had been quietly rolled away. I stepped back, breath stuck in my lungs, and watched her walk back down the aisle, smiling like nothing had happened. And then I understood. She knew. She knew what I was about to do, and she pulled the ultimate power move. She stole the spotlight. I should have felt defeated, crushed, silenced. But instead, I felt fired up. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because this wasn't just about a bridesmaid dress anymore. This was about her always winning. Always twisting the story. Always making me feel small. Not today. Not this time. After the ceremony resumed, we moved to the reception hall, a stunning glass-paneled ballroom with fairy lights and blush gold everything. There were 5 different hors d'oeuvres being passed around, a 10-foot-tall champagne tower, and a jazz band playing soft background music. It was expensive, ridiculously so. But behind the glitter, I could see the cracks. Claire kept pulling Victoria aside and whispering furiously. The cake was late. The DJ was off schedule. Someone forgot the vegan options. And on top of it all, I was still walking around in the same custom-fitted bridesmaid dress that matched the others, perfectly. Some guests even complimented me. One older woman with a shiny clutch said, "You looked so confident up there. You're the bride's sister? You should have been maid of honor." I smiled. "Thank you. I thought so too." Claire was within earshot. I know she heard. Later, I caught her watching me from the head table. Her eyes narrowed, lips tight. She hated it. Hated that she hadn't erased me. Hated that I still looked good. That people were whispering. That I was there. So when the MC took the mic to introduce the bridal party dance, I wasn't surprised when Victoria whispered something to him and glanced right at me. But what happened next? That was a twist I didn't see coming. The MC smiled. "All right, folks, before we kick off the official bridal party dance, we've got a little surprise performance tonight, brought to you by someone very special to the bride." The crowd clapped politely. My heart skipped. Claire beamed, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "And that someone is," the MC paused dramatically, "Claire's best friend since childhood, Melissa." "What?" "What?" I stood there in shock as Melissa, the childhood neighbor Claire barely even spoke to anymore, trotted up to the floor in a puffy dress 3 shades too bright, and took center stage. She grinned. Music started. It wasn't the bridal party dance. It was some weird pop remix of a Broadway show tune, and she started performing like it was an audition for American Idol. It was bad. Like, bad bad. But people clapped anyway because weddings are weird that way. And then it hit me. Claire replaced the performance. She rewrote the lineup. She'd taken away my dance routine, the one I'd trained for, practiced, timed perfectly, and shoved in this awkward little number as a decoy. And worst of all, Becca hadn't warned me. Something had gone wrong. I scanned the room, found Becca by the bar. She looked panicked, mouthing I'm sorry. Claire had found out. And now she was making sure I didn't get one moment under the spotlight. I felt the walls close in. But then, something shifted. One of the groomsmen, Colton, walked up behind me, leaned in, and whispered, "So, are we still doing this?" I blinked. Doing what? He winked. The original routine. I saw your rehearsal footage. You crushed it. He nodded toward the other girls, the professional bridesmaids. They were already quietly moving into position at the edge of the dance floor. Becca gave me a small, firm nod. And just like that, the plan was back on. Melissa's song ended with a weird cartwheel. People clapped awkwardly. Claire got up to announce the next speech. But I walked right past her, stepped up to the dance floor, took the mic from the stand. "Actually," I said, smiling, "we have one more surprise for the bride." The DJ gave me a thumbs up. The lights dimmed, the bass dropped, and as the crowd leaned in, curious, excited, wondering what was about to happen, Claire stepped forward, eyes wide, and hissed, "What do you think you're doing?" I turned to her, heart thundering, and whispered with a smile, "I'm showing them who I really am." Then I raised the mic and said the words that would set everything into motion. "You said I wasn't aesthetic enough to be your bridesmaid." The room held its breath. "But I promise you, by the end of tonight, nobody will even remember your name." And just as the music kicked in, Claire screamed. Loud. Not in pain. In rage. And then she did something that nobody in that room, not even me, could have expected. She grabbed the mic stand and lunged. Time slowed. 1 second, I was standing on the dance floor, ready to deliver the performance of my life. The next, Claire was barreling toward me like a glitter-covered missile, wedding gown flaring behind her like a white storm cloud. Her heels clacked on the marble, veil flying off her head, fake tan glistening in the light. Then, crash. The mic stand toppled. I stumbled backward, barely catching my balance as Claire lunged again, this time gripping the microphone like it was a weapon of justice. "What is wrong with you?" she shrieked, her voice echoing through the giant ballroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd like waves. A child cried. The jazz band awkwardly stopped mid-note. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, breathing slow, eyes steady. "Claire," I said calmly, "you're making a scene?" Wrong choice of words. Her face turned the color of a spoiled strawberry. "I'm making a scene? Me? You hijacked my wedding. You embarrassed me in front of everyone." "Did I?" I tilted my head. "Because I'm pretty sure you embarrassed yourself when you said I wasn't aesthetic enough to be your sister." Dead silence. Somewhere near the open bar, someone whispered, "Oof." Claire's face twitched. That was private. It was cruel. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "I would have been happy just to stand beside you. I would have worn whatever dress you picked, followed whatever theme you wanted, smiled for every single photo. But you didn't want me in the wedding, because I didn't look right next to your rented bridesmaids." Gasps again. Someone actually said rented, out loud. Claire's eyes darted around the room. The guests. The whispers. The cameras. For the first time, she looked like she didn't know what to say. So I said it for her. "You always told me I was the weird one. The loud one. The not pretty enough one. And maybe that used to be true, because I let you make me believe it." I stepped closer. "But not anymore." The DJ, bless his confused soul, had no idea what to do, but Becca gave him the signal. The music started. Low beat. Steady. Building. I took a step back, nodded to the girls, my secret bridesmaid backup crew, and we moved into formation. Claire stood frozen, fists clenched at her sides, unable to stop what was about to happen. And then we danced. Oh, we danced. We didn't just follow the routine. We owned it. Every move was sharp, clean, powerful. I had practiced for weeks, sweat through 2 pairs of shoes, bruised my knees, and pulled a muscle in my back learning every count of 8. I poured all of it, every ounce of rejection, pain, humiliation, into that performance. And for the first time ever, all eyes were on me, because I earned them. People cheered. Phones went up. I saw my cousin recording the whole thing, jaw dropped. The servers at the back were clapping. Even the DJ was dancing along in his booth. And Claire? She just stood there, frozen, helpless, watching her perfect aesthetic wedding unravel in front of her like a torn sash. When the final move hit, a slow drop followed by a snap turn, people roared. I was breathing hard, chest rising, adrenaline pumping, but I didn't break eye contact with Claire. She looked stunned. Lost. Defeated. And for a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. But before I could decide what to say next, she did something that knocked the air right out of the room again. She walked to the center of the floor, grabbed a glass of wine from a passing tray, and threw it, right at me. It missed mostly, splashed across the front of my dress, staining the pale pink silk like blood. Gasps. Again. But this time, shocked and horrified. And then a voice, low and cold, cut through the noise. Enough. Dad. He walked across the floor, eyes locked on Claire. I've had enough of this. Claire blinked. Dad. No, his voice cracked like thunder. That's your sister. And you've treated her like garbage. I don't care how many floral arches or gourmet cupcakes you bought. This is not how you treat family. Claire looked like she'd been slapped. Dad, I was trying to protect my vision. She's not. She's not what? He snapped. Claire shut her mouth. Then Mom stepped forward, heels clicking quietly, and said something I never expected to hear from her. She was the most beautiful one here tonight. Claire turned to her. Mom, what? You heard me. Mom's voice was tired, but firm. She shined. And I'm ashamed of how we treated her. I really am. The whole ballroom was dead silent. And then I realized Claire was trembling. Her hands, her shoulders, her lip. I just wanted one day, she whispered, voice cracking. Just one day where I was perfect. Where everything was beautiful. Where people didn't compare us. There it was. The truth. For a split second, I saw her, not the bridezilla or the social media queen, but the scared little girl who always needed everything to be just right so she could feel okay. I stepped forward. I never wanted to compete with you, I said. I just wanted to be seen. Claire wiped a tear, smearing mascara. Well, you got your wish. I nodded. And you got yours too. Because guess what? Even after all this, people still love you. You didn't need to be perfect. Then I pulled a tissue from my clutch and handed it to her. She took it. No more words. No more screaming. Just 2 sisters standing there in the middle of a war zone, both finally exposed. And then, just when I thought we were about to find some peace, there was a loud crash from the catering tent. People turned. A waiter came sprinting in, panicked. The wedding cake, it's gone. Claire's head whipped around. What do you mean it's gone? Gone, he gasped. Like vanished. Stolen. The table's knocked over, and there's just frosting everywhere. Gasps again. Phones up. And this time, even I had no idea what was going on. Because I didn't plan this part. Claire looked like she was about to explode again, but this time, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Melissa, her former best friend, who was now standing by the bar, smirking. Oh no, not her. Not again. Because, as it turns out, I wasn't the only one at this wedding with a revenge plan. You know that feeling when you think the storm is finally over. Then a second, louder thunderclap explodes right behind you? Yeah. That was this moment. Claire spun around, still dripping with half a glass of wine, her dress stained, her hair unraveling like a haunted doll's. Her perfect wedding was already dangling by a thread. Now, It just snapped. "The cake is what?" she shouted, practically frothing at the mouth. The waiter, poor guy, looked like he was ready to quit on the spot.
Gone.
Just gone. The dessert table is trashed. Someone knocked it over and, he gulped. It looks like someone bit into the bottom tier before running. People started murmuring, shifting in their seats, craning their necks toward the patio where the cake had been proudly displayed an hour ago. Claire narrowed her eyes, scanning the crowd, her rage seething into silence. And then she saw her. Melissa, her best friend. Or ex-best friend now. There she was, standing near the open bar, casually sipping champagne out of a flute like she hadn't just devoured $5,000 worth of fondant and French vanilla mousse. "What did you do?" Claire screamed. Melissa didn't flinch. She turned, smiled sweetly, and shrugged. "Oops." Claire lunged. Again. But this time, I stepped between them. "You need to chill," I said firmly, hand out like I was stopping a wild animal. Claire was breathing like a dragon ready to torch the whole place. "Are you with her now, too?" she snapped at me. "You two planned this together, didn't you? You're both trying to ruin my wedding." "I didn't even talk to her," I said honestly. "Trust me, this is not my brand of revenge." Melissa raised her glass. "Cheers to that." "Why would you destroy my cake?"
Claire barked.
Melissa's eyes sparkled with something dangerous. "Oh, honey," she said, "you really don't remember, do you?" Claire paused. "What are you talking about?" Melissa took a slow sip, like she was savoring every second. "8th grade. Your birthday party. My mom made you that tiered chocolate cake? The one with edible glitter and the sparkler candles."
Claire blinked.
"Okay." "You took one look at it and told everyone it looked like a cheap garage sale project. Then you threw it in the trash in front of my mom." The room gasped again. Even I felt that one in my soul. "You promised to make it up to me someday," Melissa added, voice icy now. "Well, congratulations. I just collected." Claire stood there, stunned, like someone had unplugged her brain. "You did all of this over a cake from middle school?" she finally muttered. Melissa stepped closer. "Not just the cake. You embarrassed me. You humiliated my family. And when I cried about it, you told me to get over it." Her voice didn't crack. It was steady.
"Calm."
"But I didn't," she added. "I waited." Claire let out a half-laugh, half-sob. "You psychopath." Melissa smiled. "Tell that to the raccoon I bribed with frosting to knock over your dessert table."
"Wait."
"What? You brought a raccoon?" Claire screamed, so loud I'm pretty sure a chandelier shook. Melissa turned to me and winked. "You started a trend, girl. Petty bridesmaid revenge? Hot right now." I shook my head in disbelief. "This wedding is cursed." "Agreed," Melissa said, clinking her glass against mine. Claire let out a frustrated scream and stormed off toward the bridal suite, dress dragging behind her like a broken train. Victoria, the planner, chased after her. "Claire."
"Wait."
"The photographer still needs reception shots." But Claire was gone. A door slammed somewhere in the back. Silence settled over the ballroom again. Confused guests sipped drinks. Someone nervously popped a macaron in their mouth. And then, from the other side of the room, we heard a loud bang, followed by a very familiar, very angry voice. "I swear to God, if one more person ruins this day." Another crash. Victoria reappeared seconds later, breathless, pale. "She locked herself in the bathroom and threw her bouquet in the toilet," she said in a whisper. "Also, the groom is missing." People lost it. "Missing?" someone shouted. "I saw him sneak out the side with a blonde," someone else added. "Was that the violinist?" Whispers. Chaos. More gasps. This wedding had gone from Pinterest perfect to full-on reality TV meltdown in under 20 minutes. I should have left. I should have just taken my purse and my dignity and walked out like the main character in a coming-of-age movie.
But no.
Because right then, the DJ got on the mic and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the dance floor is now open." And suddenly, everyone swarmed it. Old people.
Kids.
People in designer heels and borrowed tuxes. A conga line broke out immediately for reasons no one understood. Someone started doing the worm. Someone else passed around what looked like an emergency bottle of tequila. It was chaos. And weirdly, kind of fun. Becca appeared beside me, flushed and laughing. Well, that escalated. I don't even know what just happened, I said. I think you won the wedding, she said, poking my arm. You were epic. I didn't even finish my speech. Doesn't matter, she grinned. You made your point. Loud and clear. I turned to look at the crowd again. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the invisible sibling, or the weird one, or the not pretty enough disappointment. I felt like me.
Whole. Worthy. Seen.
Then a familiar voice called out from behind me. I owe you an apology. I turned around, and there stood Mom, tear-streaked, holding a napkin in one hand and a barely touched mini cupcake in the other. I didn't stand up for you, she said quietly. I should have. I always saw how Claire got away with everything. And I just kept telling myself you were stronger, that you didn't need defending. She took a deep breath. But strong people deserve love too. I'm sorry I forgot that. My throat tightened. She reached out and hugged me. Not a half hug. Not a pat on the back. A real hug. And I let her. I let myself feel it. Because revenge had been sweet. But this was the part one didn't know I needed. The healing. The moment after the storm when the sky finally breaks open and lets in the light. It didn't fix everything. But it was a start. I looked back at the dance floor and smiled. Then I looked toward the back hallway, the one Claire had stormed off through, and I felt that little tug in my gut again. This wasn't over. Not yet. Because as dramatic as everything had been so far, there was still one person who hadn't shown their hand. The groom. Nobody knew where he'd gone, or who he was with, or what he was about to do. But I had a bad feeling. Because secrets like this don't stay buried forever. And when they come out, they don't just ruin weddings. They ruin everything. The groom was missing. Like actually missing. The last confirmed sighting was from a bridesmaid, one of the hired models, who said she saw him near the back garden, talking to someone in a sparkly gold dress that definitely wasn't Claire. At first, everyone thought it was just wedding jitters. That maybe he needed a breather. But when an hour passed and still no sign of him, people started whispering words no one wanted to say out loud. Runaway groom. Affair.
Cold feet.
Scandal. Claire was still locked in the bathroom, refusing to come out. Victoria, the planner, had given up completely and was sitting on a folding chair eating a sad-looking shrimp skewer and muttering, "I'm switching to corporate events." I stood near the dessert table, what was left of it anyway, trying to decide if I should leave. My revenge was done. Claire had been publicly humbled. Melissa got her chaotic raccoon revenge. Even Mom had apologized. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The missing groom was more than just bad timing. Something bigger was brewing. And I was right. Because 15 minutes later, just as I was grabbing my purse, my phone buzzed. It was a text. Unknown number. Check the garden.
Now. M.
I froze. M? Melissa? I looked around. She wasn't in sight. My heart started pounding. Every rom-com and true crime documentary I'd ever watched told me not to go into a garden alone after dark. But curiosity has always been my fatal flaw. So I went. The garden was quiet. Soft string lights glowed above the hedge-lined paths. The flowers were still blooming, still beautiful, still pretending the rest of the wedding hadn't fallen apart in dramatic flames. I followed the stone path toward the fountain in the center. And that's when I saw them. 2 people. Backs to me. Talking in hushed voices. One was wearing a suit. The other a gold dress. My heart sank into my shoes. It was him. Logan. The groom. And the girl? Not a guest. Not a bridesmaid. Not someone I recognized. But definitely not his fiancée. She was tall, sharp-featured, with jet black hair in an elegant twist and expensive heels that didn't belong anywhere near garden gravel. "I told you not to come here," Logan was saying, his voice low, tense. "And I told you I wasn't going to be hidden anymore," the woman replied. Logan ran a hand through his hair.
This isn't the time.
Or the place. You were supposed to call it off, she snapped. You promised. I stepped back. Oh my God. Claire hadn't just been ditched on her big day. Logan was in love with someone else. The mystery woman took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Logan. And when she finds out what you've been doing, she's going to destroy you. I don't know if they heard the snap of a twig under my shoe, or if it was just instinct, but Logan turned. His eyes landed on me. Everything froze. Harper, he said, shocked. The woman turned too. Her eyes narrowed. You're her sister. I didn't run. I didn't flinch. I just stared. What is this? I said, my voice low and sharp. How long has this been going on? Logan looked like a trapped animal. It's not what it looks like. It never is, I said. The woman scoffed. He told me he was ending it. He told me he didn't love her anymore. I took a shaky breath. Then why are you still here? Why go through with the wedding? Logan looked down. Because her family's loaded. Her dad promised to help me open my own investment firm. If I back out now, I lose everything.
Oh.
There it was. The final, ugly truth. He wasn't just cheating on Claire. He was using her. Marrying her for the money, the connections, the lifestyle. I felt sick. And suddenly I realized something else. If I left now, if I walked away with this secret, Claire would never know. She'd think Logan had cold feet. Maybe assume it was her fault. She'd spin it into some aesthetic Instagram breakup post and move on, never understanding how close she came to marrying someone who didn't love her. And, as much as I wanted revenge, she didn't deserve that. No one did. So I pulled out my phone and hit record. Logan's eyes went wide. Wait, what are you doing? Insurance, I said. For your future investment firm. The woman smirked. I like her. Logan stepped forward. Delete that. I swear to God, Harper. I took another step back. You swear a lot of things. But I don't think God's listening to you anymore. And then I turned and walked away, heart pounding, legs shaking, but hands steady. Back inside, the reception had turned into a weird kind of dance party meets group therapy session. People were barefoot. A groomsman was crying into a plate of cheese. Melissa was showing baby pictures of Claire to a group of tipsy guests. I marched straight to the bathroom, banged on the door. Claire? I called. Silence. It's me. More silence. Then go away. I know where Logan is. The door clicked open. Her face was a mess. Makeup streaked. Eyes red. Hair hanging limp. What? She croaked. I found him. In the garden. Claire's eyes flickered. I nodded. Yeah. And then I handed her my phone. She watched the video in silence. No gasps. No outbursts. Just a slow, hard unraveling. When it ended, she looked up at me. Her eyes were clear. I'm gonna kill him, she said calmly. That's fair. She handed the phone back. Thank you. For what? For not letting me marry a snake in a tux. I shrugged. Well, I figured you deserved to ruin your life yourself, not have someone else do it for you. A pause. Then Claire laughed. Actually laughed. God, we're a mess, she said. Yeah, I smiled. But at least we're not boring. She wiped her eyes. I guess you were the main character after all. Always have been, I said. You just didn't notice. She pulled me into a hug.
Tight. Real.
And this time, we held on to it. Not because we forgave everything, but because somehow we'd made it to the other side. We stepped back into the reception together. No speeches. No announcements. Just two sisters, finally on the same side. The crowd parted. And then someone shouted, "Look!" The raccoon came back. And sure enough, it was there. Bold. Frosting all over its face. The chaos had come full circle. I looked at Claire. She looked at me. We both burst out laughing. And for the first time ever, we were laughing together.